see you. Yesterday, everybody. I think I bow a little bit. I'm lazy, I just do like that. Thank you.
Oh dear.
Okay.
Your baggage.
Yes, yes. You don't have a little table I can put my computer. I guess I don't need it. I don't really need it. Hello there, she is. Naina. Nice to see you. Okay, Prasangika Madhyamaka. Naina. Okay, oh, that's nice. Thank you. Just in case. It's okay. I have to look up something. Like usually I like to imitate His Holiness. And we read Heart Sutra together in a Zen way.
Oh,
but we don't need
nice.
to do that. We won't. I try my own translation anyway. I don't like other translations.
If you would.
But
that's
never mind. We won't bother with that.
Start.
We'll just talk about it. Okay. But matter, form is emptiness. We don't say it. We say matter is emptiness. Emptiness is matter. That's very important. Okay. Anyway, well, I'll talk about it. Yes, please. I'm sorry.
Is this on?
Shurona Kusha.
Thank you. So, welcome everyone. We're very happy to see every one of you here and people online as well. My name is Droma. I'm the center director here at Jamyang, and it's our total privilege and honor to welcome Professor Bob Thurman here at Jamyang. And so I had to ask some of the...
I become irritating.
I had to ask some of the elders in the community when Professor Thurman was last at Jamyang, because I was like, for sure, he's been at Jamyang before.
Okay. What happened?
I had to ask some of the elders, because Jamyang has been in existence for almost 50 years.
I see.
And so I wondered, okay, when was the last time you were at Jamyang? And then I was informed, Professor, this is the first time that you are visiting Jamyang.
That's very nice.
So finally, we're delighted that you're here. Really, really happy. And Professor Thurman needs no introduction, and attested to the fact that in our community, of course in Tibetan Buddhist communities, Professor Thurman is a rock star. And so this event, you are our rock star. So this event sold out within just a few days. And then ever since we advertised it, we've been getting these emails every day of like, are you sure you're sold out?
I see.
So,
well, are you live streaming?
We're live streaming.
Oh, good. I'm so happy.
We're live streaming.
That's nice.
So earlier today, we're having this conversation with our resident teacher, Geshe Namdak, who sends his regards, his warm regards. And we were checking whether Geshe-la had ever heard of Taylor Swift. And actually he had, which surprised some of us. But in our community, the same isn't everyone knows Professor Thurman.
Oh, that's very nice. So, Steve, where's my book, the red book? Since we're live streaming, I would like to have that. I want to show that to people at some point,
And so tonight we're especially thrilled and delighted because tonight you are going to speak on the great 14th, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and I believe you may have known His Holiness for maybe this year is the 60th anniversary of you meeting His Holiness. Maybe.
61st.
61st. Okay, 61st.
1964 we met.
64.
In Sarnath, in near Benares.
Amazing. And so you're uniquely qualified to talk about His Holiness in so many different ways.
Well, not really,
so
but no one can understand an ocean, But I do admire him a lot, and he's wonderful, as you know. So we'll talk about that.
And so we will be together for possibly a couple of hours.
I guess
maybe
so.
longer.
If I don't pass out.
We'll see. And then towards the end, we'll have about half an hour of live Q&A. And so there will be space for those online and here in the temple. And so, Professor, welcome to Germany.
Thank you so much. First of all, thank you so much. Very kind, everyone is. It's so nice to see you all. And I don't know why I gave this title to you, because you're at the Manjushri Center, the Jamyang Center, Manjugosha Center, perhaps I should say. And that means you're all very advanced, and you're very sincere and very devoted. So I thought, why not go to the max and mention about His Holiness as Mahavajradhara. You know, there's Vajradhara, and then there's Mahavajradhara, great Vajradhara. And there's in the Kriya Samaja Tantra, which of course was so beloved to Lama Tsongkhapa and to all the Dalai Lamas. There's a bit of a difference between Vajradhara and Mahavajradhara, great Vajradhara. I mean, it's all just verbal, you know, of course. It isn't really different, but there's a bit of a difference. And so I thought, why not discuss that for everyone? And I had no idea I'd be in such a beautiful room, and these amazing golden Life of the Buddha frescoes, or whatever you call them, are quite wonderful, really. And this room, courthouse, you said not a temple, a church, but a courthouse, and a place of judgment, therefore. And of course, this is the job of a Buddhist. The job of Buddhists is to make a judgment about what they are and what life is. And the following of a Buddha is not just worship of somebody. He has not to be worshipped, actually, the Buddha. As His Holiness, I'm sure His Holiness has talked to you, right? And I'm sure he told you all this one about Gelondag Kenemji, you know, where the wise people, they don't just, they're like a goldsmith who takes the gold and melts it and cuts it and touches it on a touchstone before deciding it's true gold, and then will buy it at the market. And so therefore what any teacher says, you measure it on your experience, you cut it with your analysis, and you put it on the touchstone of your life. And then if it's worthwhile, you accept it, and otherwise not out of dedication just because Buddha said so, right? As His Holiness explained that. I had a kind of epiphany about His Holiness once, 3 or 4 decades ago, when I realized he was giving a teaching in Switzerland, and as usual, I was terribly busy and I wasn't able to really enjoy the teaching. But I sort of I had to meet him about something, and so then I sneaked into the teaching, and then it was a stage, you know, with a huge audience, and I was on the side, and he taught this verse. And then in teaching his verse, of course, he was on the big throne in the Tibetan cultural thing, you know, and there were different teachers on the as they said, on the stage. You know, you've seen that setting, I'm sure, here in England. I've been here. I was here once when he did some Dzongchen thing, you know, but then he's on the throne, right? But then he's saying he has the body language of a waiter in a Chinese restaurant, saying, please don't just say Dalai Lama said this and that, and that's a great thing, and blah, blah, blah. Just you think about it, analyze it, throw it away if it doesn't measure up, and so forth, and use your own intelligence. And then he gave that, he commented on that verse, you know. And the body language was kind of shocking. And I noticed there were people from different religions on the sides there, you know. And some of them looked kind of uncomfortable, who perhaps were enjoying being gurus. And meanwhile, he was like putting the agency and the responsibility on the student, as where it belongs, you know. So it's quite wonderful, I thought. With a little bit of an epiphany, you know, about seeing His Holiness walk his talk, you know, so beautifully, you know. Don't you think? What do you think? Yes, you do. You like that. Great. So anyway, Mahavajradhara, what is Mahavajradhara? And the other thing that made me think of it, maybe when I thought of the title, you know, which I didn't give it very good thinking, I must say, but I did, was one of my great teachers was Tara Toku, who was former abbot, the previous life, former abbot of Goethe, Upper Tantric College. And he used to do a thing which I thought was quite wonderful in the context of Tibetan lamas and gurus and giving initiations. And when he would give an initiation, even on Excel Yoga Tantra, he would say, when you receive initiation in Guru Samaj or something, whatever, it's very important you see the Guru as indivisible from the Yidam, from the chosen deity. And he said, but I'm not really good enough for you to think of me like that, he would say, except for ceremonial, according to your imagination. So I want you to consider me to be an emanation of His Holiness, who is the only one who really is able to give this in such and such and such a way, In other words, and I always admired that so much because of the temptation of a guru, because of that teaching about a Lama, that the Lama has to be one with the Yidam, with the Yamantaka or Guru Samaj, whatever it is, and then to sort of go pretend they're going to act like that all the time, even in the kitchen and the bathroom and wherever, and sort of use that kind of as a leverage in a relationship, Whereas that Taratoko is putting that burden to His Holiness, which fits, I think, with the Tibetan saying. I believe there's a saying, again, I'm sorry, my Tibetan is so rusty, I can't remember it in Tibetan, but they say that the best Lama is the Lama who lives at least 3 valleys away. And 3 valleys means like a flight to New York and then to Chicago and then to Los Angeles, because of the passes, in Tibet. So then you don't have to be there, worry about their bossing around what they're eating or drive their car or do some sort of thing. You can think of them like Milarepa thought about Marpa, and not to think about Marpa's bad habits of squabbling with his neighbors or being mean to his wife, actually, which unfortunately Marpa tended to be. I don't know if you know that. Marpa was a little rough on the Dhammema, Mrs. Marpa. And so I thought that was quite wonderful, because I think the guru relationship can be, we have seen already, it is distortable, it can cause problem and trouble. Western people, although they think of themselves as a great democratic individual, especially of Americans, nonconformists and really very individualistic, and those Asian people, they don't really know they're there, they just think they're collective rowing their canoes, which is ridiculous. But because we are a bunch of conformists, in fact, us or other, and they're nothing like. Actually, I used to have a thing I would do with my students at the university, when I would get up to this level with them about Western individualism, and I would use India rather than Tibet, actually, as an example of individual, the sadhu, figure. So some Westerner who wanted to argue with me about how individualistic Westerners are, I would say, okay, let's put it to the test. Strip naked except for a jockstrap, paint yourself this way and put stripes on your forehead, take a trident in one hand, a bowl in the other, and go down Broadway to the noodle shop and demand a free lunch, and see how far you get. No one ever took me up on that. I'm not sure why. When they have Kumbh Mela, they have like 10 million sadhus, and the Indians tolerate that, They allow that level of individualism, which is quite fun, I think, really. Okay, so anyway, so that made me also think of Dalai Lama as Mahavajradhara, And so Mahavajradhara, it's I know we're all Gelugpas around here, but Mahavajradhara idea is a little bit Dzogchen-ish, It's a little bit immediacy kind of thing, And Jai Rinpoche also had that, And the idea that, when you attain enlightenment, are you planning? Anybody here planning to attain enlightenment? Really? And I hope you can call it enlightenment. I'm quite annoyed with the translation community. They're running around like, acting like it's an orthodoxy now. You can only say awakening. No more enlightenment. We don't say enlightenment anymore. It's just all awakening. And And meanwhile, that's dishonoring to the Tibetans, the genius Tibetans. Sangye. Sang is awakening, yes, but Ye is expanding to sarvajnata, to omniscience, to compassion, to becoming infinite in helping all beings. And that really, and that relates to our Western Enlightenment, which was getting away from dogmatic church and observing nature. And that's tremendously helpful to us. Although I'm much less polite than His Holiness toward the materialists, I kind of really want to get on their case. I go crazy in Mind and Life meetings, the few that I have attended. They don't invite me all the time, and I don't blame them. Because when they're there, we had a meeting with Dalai Lama about science, but they just talk all the time. And they tell His Holiness about how brilliant American science and Western science, and we're really on the brain there. We're really probing around in there. And we're developing neurotransmitters and, Prolog and Prozac, and very soon we're going to have everything under control, every last neuron. What do you Holiness think? You think there's such a thing as a mind? Do you still think that? But we'll work on that. How could mind ever matter? They condescendingly will talk like that, and then they will say, look at my research, Your Holiness, and he's really interested. Wow, But one time he was naughty, actually. I loved it, I have to say. I was very bad. I'm going to be very bad tonight, I think, because I have a Buddhist audience. I was in Thailand, actually. I had a broken foot. I was in the middle of a tour, so I had to wait or something. And I was watching, they were live streaming from Drebong and God, And some quantum people were talking about, and they were live streamed within all the monks in Ganden and the whole sites there. And the guy was really losing the audience because he was talking about, but two atoms are in the same place. And that's really hard to understand, but you got to really figure it out. And then suddenly they separate for no reason, no cause. And these things are totally logical impossibilities in Tibetan science, Buddhist science, Indian science. Nothing can happen with no cause. If something happens with no cause, it would happen uncontrollably everywhere. It'd be happening right here in this room. We'd be smothered under whatever it was. Because if it has no cause, then there's nothing to stop it spontaneously exploding in all directions. It's just, misuse of language, let's call it. But they do, the quantum people, to act like they're still in control. And meanwhile, even from that day in Copenhagen, over 2 beers, when they freaked out poor Mr. Einstein about God playing dice, they had to face the fact they've had almost a century now. Next year it'll be 1 century, 1926 to 2026, to face the fact that although they're materialists, they can't find the matter. It disappears under analysis. It's just that Higgs boson they're chasing around Calcutta or Switzerland, in between espressos. Something explodes on the subway there, and then they analyze it, and it's a Higgs boson. That's the indissoluble particle. We finally got it. That's such nonsense. So then they get into some dead cat and a live cat, and the collapse of the wave function, and it's like, then they do make a movie or a documentary of themselves standing in front of a blackboard with a bunch of weird mathematical things, and they say, well, you guys don't know the math. You can't ever understand. Just like any high priest coming up with mystification. Nonsense. The fact is, matter and mind, neither one can get along without the other. And, we're not Vijnanavadins here, we're Prasangika Madhyamikas. So anyway, I'm sorry, I was telling about all this. So then he was giving that sort of story, and he felt really bad. He knew he was losing his audience, because all the Tibetan geishas know there's this senseless talk, a bunch of other quantum things, all those kind of crazy things they say, that leads to people selling weird medicines on internet based on quantum this and that. Quantum ED cures. So then, the guy tried at the end of his talk, says, well, you know, Your Holiness, it's really hard for anybody to understand all this, we know. So we're trying to figure out how to fit it together with ethics. So we'll have quantum ethics. So he was trying to get on His Holiness's good side, because he knows His Holiness wants them to be ethical, rather than some neutral science that has nothing to do with life. So His Holiness, that was kind of the end, quantum ethics. Ethics on top of something senseless, but anyway, sounding good. So then His Holiness says, oh, that's wonderful. He's so polite, His Holiness. If you can do that, why, I will give you a quantum guru's hat. And everybody laughs, explosive. All those monks, they're all laughing. They know it's a joke, he's teasing them, but they're not sure. Okay, hat, like, what kind of hat? And I'm flipping out in Thailand, like, oh, he's going to be naughty now. And then he says, and then the laughter dies down, and then he says, and that hat will have a lot of holes in it, he says. And then a big laughter was laughing. And of course, they're thinking, I can read their mind, they're thinking, well, it was hot, it was summertime or springtime in Mundgod in South India, and maybe like one of those Australian hats that has ventilation. They were thinking, what kind of hat would that be? There are two of them, the quantum guys. And then, again, the laughter dies down, and then His Holiness says, to go along with the holes in your theories. And then I went completely berserk, all on my own. And my poor wife, she wondered what happened to him. We were watching on this TV, in Thailand. And then immediately shifts gear, His Holiness. And again, he's the waiter in the Chinese restaurant. Oh, just teasing. No, just teasing. He goes like that. And he's the humble to the white scientist, He's the humble. And then he gave them a check for $1 million because he loved the dialogue. So he was naughty, I think, because he knew he was going to make a great gift to the Mind and Life, which is a wonderful organization. Don't mind me, my rudeness. I love it because you have to know, when we meditate, when you meditate on selflessness, and you even go to work on your physical aggregate, form is so vague, but it's body, it's matter, rupa, in that context, the word rupa, suk in Tibetan, it's your body. And when you meditate in it, the fact that you can go to your atoms and realize that they will dissolve under analysis, and so you can sort of get out of body. If you develop a little bit of concentration, I bet you have. And that's because of their terrific observation of nature, having escaped from being tortured by the Inquisition, Galileo and the whole thing. They're so scared of the religious fanatics, and they should be here in the West, So, I'm not completely against their nihilism, except insofar as when it becomes popular, we live in a culture where everyone has no future life. So therefore, they think they can just get away from all the consequences of the negative bombs they've dropped on people just by dying. Then you have eternal anesthesia. You don't have consequences, the napalm doesn't follow you into the next life, which is a very important cautionary factor in the multi-life reality view, which I hope all of you have very clearly embraced. The Deljonyeka, the difficulty of finding the human embodiment endowed with liberty and opportunity. I believe that's a real thing for people in this community. And that means that you're not going to solve your problems by dying. And that means, my slogan is, nobody gets out of here dead. So that's one deed of the great Mahavajradhara, talking with the scientists, and they all love him dearly, and they have brilliant ideas in his space, but they haven't really asked him enough questions over the years. If you remember that one book, The Universe in an Atom, remember the science book that he inspired and Matthew Ricard worked on and so on. And then at some point His Holiness says in there, and more you look at nature and you look at the atoms, you look at the subatomic particles, and finally maybe someday something will be looking out at you. Some living life will look at you from the nature that you're observing, you know. In other words, you're part of that life, and the world is alive. And that isn't primitive animism. That's the nature of life, you know. Not that, you know, Prasangikas are not idealists, like let's Vijnanavada, you know, that's very valuable. Jayram Tsongkhapa writes about it, how wonderful the idealism can be, you know, the people who say it's all mind, but actually that's just as dumb as saying it's all matter. Actually, it's mind and matter, it's both. And, you know, one doesn't mean anything without the other. If you say it's all either or this or that, you're just misusing language. Right, Sim and Suk. You can't say it's all this or all that, or you flattened it out, you know. They go together. Even the super subtle mind, are you guys doing Tantra? Do you know about indestructible drop? Do you know about that? Anakshara Bindu? You know about it? But Anakshara Bindu is physical and mental, same. There's the duality of the coarse mind and the coarse body, subtle mind and subtle body, super subtle mind and body of the Anakshara Bindu. Then the super subtle lung, the wind or energy as I prefer to translate it in that context, and the super subtle mind, the Chitta Santana, the mental continuum that is what causes goes and finds the rebirth, you know. That's there. No, you don't make a difference at that stage of Shuddha. But His Holiness doesn't like to push that because the materialists would triumphantly say, yes, you see, mind is finally reducible to matter. But yes, it is, sure, at that context. But then also matter is reducible to mind. We can go that way, either way. So in any level of making sense, it has to be, you know, relative reality is binary. And we have conceptualities. And I'm very pleased the word samjana, your third aggregate, do you all meditate 5 aggregates when you're looking for the self? I hope you've learned that by now, everybody here. Have you? The middle aggregate people will translate as perception, right? You know, and they're terrible. They insist on translating the second one as feelings. You shouldn't do that. Feelings are, emotions in English. Reactions to pleasure and pain. But the second one, Vedana, Tsorwa in Tibetan, is just pleasure and pain or numbness. It isn't reacting to it. It's just a sensation. So sensation is the right word for that. And the third one is not really perception. The third one is recognition, aggregate. And that's really good. When you recognize something, first you saw it, and even if you weren't stoned, you know what it is. You know, like I see something there, could be any kind of complex, somebody could have made a sculpture there. Oh, no, I recognize it's a camera. So recognize, in other words, I know it a second time by fitting it with my concept of a camera and a tripod. Of course, we do it so fast that we think, in fact, the Nyayikas in India argued with Dignaga that your raw perception or your raw experience immediately brings the concept in. And Dignaga's great breakthrough, which is Tibetan Tema, Pramana, you know, Kesla Yishi Ngawang knows that. He studied that in Seraje. He did. And you know, that's Dignaga's great thing, that actually the raw experience is completely beyond. Dignaga must have been stoned, Naina, because he says it's beyond conceptualization. It's avyapadesha. It's unsusceptible to terminology when you first see something. You don't know what it is, you know. And you only recognize it when your concept comes and grabs it, you know. But then people think that the concept is in the thing. Swarupa means you think that, you know, that's intrinsic objectivity in the thing, which the Madhyamaka empties, right? Now you all know all this, I'm assuming. I see someone with a furrowed brow. That's just because you're being thoughtful, I'm sure. Emptiness is very simple. There's no brow furrowing about it. It's the absolutely simplest thing. It is Buddha's great scientific discovery, Nagarjuna's great scientific elaboration, His Holiness's ground of teaching, and that is that all relational things are empty of anything non-relational. The absolutes, that is the only absolute, is the lack of a relevant absolute. So you can't say God is absolute, the ground is absolute, anything is absolute. If it's absolute, you can't relate to it. If you relate to it, it's relative. Therefore, nobody can create the world without relating to it. That's just exaggerated misuse of language, theological type of language. And emptiness is not absolute sitting waiting for us to float away into emptiness. That's dualistic. Non-dualism means emptiness is right here between us. We're all emptiness here. Which means that Buddha's discovery of emptiness is the discovery of relativity. Don't give me this dependent arising. I can't stand arising. It's a Sankhya idea. It's like something that arises already exists and then it pops up. Like porpoises. I always think of porpoises jumping. Dependent arising. Origination is much better. But it's basically relativity. And then what happens when everything is relative? So that means we're here in nirvana, you and me, looking at each other. We're both in nirvana already. Unfortunately, and our bodies know it, but our concepts don't know it, because we're unhappy because I didn't meditate enough and I didn't melt into nirvana. That's kind of a little bit, and there'll be a big experience, kaboom. Suddenly, space like equipoise samadhi, yes, we attain, it's very healing, but it's also a relational experience. It's us experiencing what we expect to be the absolute. Because if it's really absolute, it's right here. So that's why, misknowing in Tantra is the mirror wisdom, mirror-like wisdom, right? You all know the 5 wisdoms? Sure, you all do. You've had tantric initiations, I'm sure. There's the 5 wisdoms. It's Vairochana in Unexcelled Yoga Tantra, in the Eastern Gate, right? Akshobhya in the center. But the mirror wisdom is so brilliant, because what happens to us when we look in the mirror? I see some weirdo who is supposed to look like me through a window in another 3-dimensional space, so it's to look like my bathroom or whatever room I'm in. And so I completely misperceive it. I misexperience it, right? But my mind corrects that instantly through inference, because at one point when I was a child, I tried to reach that person and it clunked into the mirror surface. So I remember that. And therefore, we can misexperience something and correct it instantaneously. So the non-dual nirvana is samsara, samsara is nirvana, means that I see myself and this gentleman here as 2 separate things, and I think I'm separate, and I'm really upset about it, because I worry about what might happen to me from the other rest of the world. Something might happen. There might be somebody after me. Trump might have me arrested by ICE. Whatever might happen. So, but actually he's the same as me. We're the same, actually. So if I have enough space-like experience, I'm not going to stay in space. But what I will do is I will have a powerful inference that will correct my misperception of me, self, and other as 2 different things, simultaneously, with seeing them wrongly. You follow me? So isn't that beautiful? So the mirror, Tsongkhapa, Je Rinpoche, Lama Tsongkhapa says very clearly, illusion-like aftermath samadhi, after you have attained the space-like equipoise samadhi, the dream-like or illusion-like aftermath samadhi, doesn't mean that everything looks woo-woo like you're stoned out or something. it looks just as distinct and seemingly a bunch of separate things as it did before. But now you know it will dissolve. It is in a sense dissolved into space, and it is all space. So you see it like an illusion, mayopama, not maya, flatly, not unreal, but like an illusion. And that enables, and then when you feel that we're here, and then nirvana is this relativity, what is the logical thing to do if you're stuck in relativity? Shunyata karuna garbham. What is the story then? What's the rational thing to do if you're stuck in relativity? You have to love it. Why would you not love it? Everything about it. You're stuck with it. We're stuck with each other. Like, we're all going to go home. I'm going to fly back to New York. You're going to go wherever, to Sussex or Wiltshire or like Devon or like whatever, south side, north side. You won't be bothered by Bob Thurman anymore or Mahavajradhara or whatever. But what if you never get away from me? What if I never get away from you? Should I dislike you? No. I'm going to like you. Because why? Then I'll be nice to you. Then you might be nice to me. That could make good sense. So that's Shunyata Karuna Garbham. Dongnid Ningje Ningbojen. So beautiful in Tibetan because of the Ning Ning Ning. Dongnid Ningje Ningbojen. Having and they translate in Tibetan the word Garbha as Ningbo, essence. And it's also, they also talk about the Tathagata essence, Buddha nature. The guys do that, even in Tibet. But you know what it really is? Tathagata Garbha, you know what Garbha means? It means womb. So we don't have Buddha natures, we all have Buddha wombs, even the guys. But they didn't want to tell that to those warrior Tibetans. What do you mean, a womb? I don't want no womb. My wife has a womb, but not me. You know, it's very funny. I'm very happy now. I discovered recently that somebody else other than me rejected this wrong Buddhist idea. I don't know if you've heard. They say that women can't go to Pure Land. There's no women in the Pure Land. And this comes from them saying there's no women in the Brahma, Kayika, Deva, in the four immeasurables, you know, which are the 16 levels of the realm of pure form, as they call it, or pure matter. There's no women there, they say. But actually, there's no men either. They don't have ordinary genitalia of any kind. So the guy says, no, I'm sorry, there's no action. And there's no females. And everybody has the right channel and the left channel, you know? The female channel and the male channel. Everybody is bi. Everybody is trans. Even the Republicans. So it's so rude that throughout history they've been saying there's no women in the Pure Land. And because there are no women in the Brahma realm. And that's why it's pure, because nobody in the Brahma, none of the Brahma Devas in immeasurable love, compassion, joy, and equanimity spaces, none of them are looking for a date on Saturday night. So it's pure. It's such male chauvinist BS in India and Tibet and China and Japan and Korea and everywhere else. And it's time we corrected it. Don't you think? Yeah. Yes? I think it's very important. So, okay, so Mahavajradhara. So that means, you know, I think, actually, I once had a taste of it. One time, His Holiness got sick in Japan on his way to Long Beach, near Los Angeles, to the Gandhan Dharma Center there. And there was a huge crowd, 3,000 or 4,000 people in an auditorium. And Thupten Jimba was completely freaked out, and Geshe Dargya, whatever his name was really freaked out. And there was an audience there, but His Holiness was still in Japan because he was sick and somehow it hadn't been announced. And they didn't want to refund everybody. And nobody wanted to face them, so they said, "Oh, Bob, oh, you're here? Okay, can we just tell them?" They finally stuck me out there. Like to announce that His Holiness is en route, maybe by tomorrow, on Air Japan. So I didn't know what to do, so I did what I assumed Mahavajradhara would do. I scolded them. I said, "You guys are going to be pissed off because Dalai Lama's not here. You paid to come and listen to Dalai Lama. He's not here." Well, he got ill. Your action of being mad and upset and your month's worth is really bad. This is your great opportunity to have compassion for His Holiness. And now you can meditate that you can imagine that he will be here, and you can wish him goodwill and send prayers that he'll get well and he'll cold or his flu or his whatever he has. And I gave them a good 15 minutes of what we call in Tibetan sogdam. I gave them a kind of chiding. And Chimpal, all of us were so relieved. And they were all like ready to meditate. Then I ran away, of course. But that's like he's here, His Holiness is not traveling, but he's everywhere online. And you can hear that it's one happy family. And it's like nobody's killing nobody, they better stop. And we're going to have a happy century. Now we're all kind of depressed. I know some people who say, "Oh, Dalai Lama shouldn't say anything about politics. He's so naive. Oh, don't tell him not to say anything, please." Tell me like, but why shouldn't he say something? And you know what? I did this book. I want to show you this book. I am promoting it shamelessly. Annie Bien, Mrs. Annie Bien, who's a Chinese-American poet, but really American completely, was brought to America when she was 2 or 3 years of age, and she's a great poet. And we wrote together this fictionalized, exciting, magical adventures of the 6th Dalai Lama, his life and loves. And don't be upset. I asked His Holiness, do you mind if I write a fictionalized life of the great 6th Dalai Lama? Or they don't say great, actually. They're nervous about it. Actually, all the Tibetans really love the guy. They think he's so cool. But he's the Dalai Lama who refused to be a monk after a while. And he really liked girls. And everybody was in love with him, boys and anybody, And actually, but His Holiness thinks he wasn't just a playboy. What he was he was planning. This is right at the end of the 1600s, and early 1700s, and he was planning to not govern as a monk. He wanted to become a Dharma Raja like Songtsen Gampo, or like Chisong Detsen, because the instability in Central Asia was quite threatening to Tibet at that time. There were different factions among the Mongolians, and then there were the Manchus who were in charge of China, and they were oppressing the Chinese. Actually, they conquered China. We say Qing dynasty, but actually it was the Manchu dynasty, and they were sitting on top of the Chinese, pulling their pigtails. And they were no longer really respecting, like they did the great 5th Dalai Lama, building the Potala and everything, because they really respected him because he was keeping the Mongolians off their backs, do you know what I mean? But by this time, the Mongolians were getting, and the Mongolians, don't ever mess with a Mongolian. Don't try to attack a Mongolian, When Putin attacked Ukraine, the president of Mongolia sent a public email to him with a map of the Mongol Empire at its fullest extent, from Korea to Austria. And he said, "President Putin, good luck." So it was a time of great instability. So the Changyang Gyatso, the 6th Dalai Lama, he wanted to be a layman, and he wanted to have a queen and an offspring, and he wanted to have a Dharma Raja kingdom where there would be some defense for Tibet, because they were already, 5th Dalai Lama more or less finished the demilitarization of Tibet, and they depended on diplomacy and foreign sponsors to keep one or another invader off of them. Do you know what I mean? And that was breaking down. So that's his present Dalai Lama's theory. about, and you can find it in that book by Tom Laird, called Tibet, Tibet. That's his theory about the sixth Dalai Lama. That was what he was really about. So in honor of that theory, we have him fall totally in love with an incarnation, an emanation of the white Tara. And they have and then she goes with his mom. I'm giving away a little bit, but never mind. She goes with his mom to the tomb of Songtsen Gampo, and a light comes from the Songtsen Gampo to her womb, and she conceives the crown prince of the new dynasty. But however, he's not allowed to do it because the Mongol who is supposed to be protecting and did protect, his grandfather protected the fifth Dalai Lama, instead wants to put his son as the Dalai Lama and wants to demote him, and especially his wife, who's in love. I mean, there's a lot of intrigues going on. So he doesn't manage to do it. And the thing is, he has to hide the queen, the white Tara, because that Mongol queen kills anybody who is a love interest of anybody she's in love with, and she's in love with the sixth Dalai Lama herself. The Tsedingma, her name is Tsering Tashi. She's the wife of Lasang Khan, who is the grandson of Gushri Khan, who's the one who protected the fifth Dalai Lama and helped him build, while he built the Potala and so on. So the girlfriends and the womanizing that he did were to disguise that there was a one special one who was even pregnant, actually. But that's our fiction, of course. We don't know that. But if you read it, you'll get into it. Believe me. It's very exciting, and I'm sorry, it's like a door. You can also use it as a doorstop in your house because it's too long for a modern novel. And it's really fun about, and then, and when I told His Holiness, I said, Your Holiness, you sure you don't mind if I do a fictional work on this? Oh, no, that's fine. I said, you sure? That's the lover boy Dalai Lama, I said, Your Holiness. And he said, never mind, I don't mind, blah, blah, and he had his theory, And then he told Jimbala to find for me a book. The Tibetans don't believe, as the British scholars do believe, the Tibetans don't believe that he was actually successfully killed in 1706 when he was 23, which the Mongolians tried to kill him. But, because the Mongolians didn't want him to go to the Manchu Emperor. Because the Manchu Emperor was saying, okay, he's a fake Dalai Lama, he's not a monk, you say that, so depose him and send him to me. But they knew that if the Manchu Emperor met him, he would also fall in love with him, because everybody who met him fell in love with him, because he was a Dalai Lama, the sixth Dalai Lama. It was amazing. Do you know the story? Don't you know the story about him? When some Tibetan aristocrats are complaining that he's really making a bad reputation by having some girlfriends and going to archery contests, and instead of being this, which he was for a while when he was a teenager, early 20s, he had become this Mr. Man About Town, wearing a blue thing, And so then he said, look, don't tell me I'm just an ordinary person, just womanizing. And then he jumped up on the wall of the roof of the Potala, the guardrail. They thought he was going to commit suicide or something. They were freaked out. But he didn't. He peed. And then the fluid started flowing down in a nice arc. And then he brought it back up. Vajroli, what the yoga calls Vajroli, he brought it back up and reinserted it back into the bladder, which is a yogic skill, apparently. It's a bit weird. Don't look freaked out. It's in every yoga book, the ability to do that. So that was his proof that he wasn't an ordinary, whatever, He wasn't just an ordinary, never mind. He wasn't Jeffrey Epstein. So it was very exciting. Anyway, His Holiness, did you see? So the Tibetans and His Holiness, when I'm asking him, do you mind if I do it? This was about 10 years ago. He then says, and also Pendin Lama, you got to know about how Pendin Lama saved his life. She made a dust storm. He escaped from the Mongolians. He went on to teach in Mongolia for 40, and China and everywhere for 40 years. Because they have a book like that, and he told Jimba, give him the book. And give Bob the book. He's got to know that continuation of where he went. He could no longer try to keep peace in Central Asia and protect Tibet from the Dalai Lama seat because he wasn't the usual monk. And so he went into a lightning storm, and he split himself in multiple emanations, and one became the seventh Dalai Lama, and one went and taught for 40 years in Mongolia. And then a few, in our fiction, we have a few extra ones, head to Europe. Never mind, we don't say where it went, and we don't know. But you had him go to the West, like Avalokiteshvara could easily do. So anyway, and that, you can find that there's a gentleman named Wickham Smith, who I don't know personally, but he's a British scholar here, a student of Michael Arras, and he translated that book that the Dalai Lama wanted me to have, Actually, I didn't get it, or I would, and that's going to be the sequel to this book, actually, about his adventures in Mongolia and in China. And I think he might have had to do with the success of the Qianlong Emperor to become the emperor, because it's always a contest of crown princes, in those harem situations. It's very bloody often, in that kind of kingdom, empire. So anyway, that's a sixth Dalai Lama. That's therefore not a failure, but actually protecting the people of Tibet even then, according to the present Dalai Lama. And our present great 14th Dalai Lama sometimes wishes Tibet could have defended itself a little bit. Not that he's not a comedian. He's a little bit of a comedian like the Zelensky, but he wasn't an official comedian. He was a Dalai Lama, but he is quite a comedian. Do you know? Mahavajradhara is a bit of a comedian. Can I tell you a story about a comedy he did to me? Do you mind? I was leaving in 1980. By that time, the Dalai Lama's monk had 4 children and a nice Swedish wife, who is my guru also, by the way. And then we were having an exit interview. I'd been about a year in a sabbatical year in Dharamsala and Dalhousie and Delhi and whatever, So I wanted to bring the children, and one of them was only 2 years old at that time. The older one was a bit older. To have that exit interview, and I wanted to show them the way you'd be with the Lama. And my wife was telling me, don't do that, His Holiness doesn't like formality. I said, no, I'm going to bow to His Holiness, all the way prostrate, and then the kids will imitate me, and they'll really know how you behave with the Dalai Lama, and et cetera, et cetera. So I'm determined to do this. So I come into the room, and His Holiness is there ready to greet us, and I start to bow like this, and I get about this far, and His Holiness pretends that he thinks I was going to shake his hand, so he grabs one of my hands, and I completely flop over on the floor, and the children think that's the greatest thing that ever happened, and the best audience possible with the Dalai Lama is to everybody flop on the floor. And my wife is like, typical, I told you so, you moron. He doesn't like formalities. And everybody had a huge ice-breaking laugh and everything, and they had an indelible memory of His Holiness. And then we all were sat down at some point, and then the youngest one, who was 2, apparently hadn't quite caught up with us all, and there was this banging noise, and suddenly he's doing the Australian crawl across the floor. He wants to keep it up. So that's the comedian side of Dalai Lama. So I'm saying, Tibet is demilitarized, right, and non-violent, and they had a few troops over there in Kham, but they really couldn't stand against the Red Army, and so non-violence in that case is you just don't resist, because you'll kill some of them as they on their way in, and then they'll even torture you even more. But on the other hand, nonviolence doesn't mean, when you have a genocidal invasion coming at you, that you can't defend yourself if you're capable of it. There's a sutra like that called the Range of the Bodhisattva, Bodhisattva Gochara Sutra. And it says about how you should defend yourself if you have the means to do so. So the reason I'm launching into this, it isn't just promoting the book. Honestly, I have a reason. And the reason is, His Holiness predicts we're going to have a century of peace. And nobody thinks so right now. We have Palestine, we have Ukraine, there is South Sudan, which, by the way, is Wagner. It's not just the UAR arming the Rapid Defense Force there, who just slaughtered, I don't know how many people in Darfur. It's Wagner, it's KGB. It's going to get Brexit. Who do you think inflicted Brexit on you? you know. Which investor did? So we're having, in a way, what it is the bloody century that he refers to when he talks about the peaceful century is just still going on. You know, it didn't stop because it became the year 2000 and we're in the 21st century. Do you follow me? Those things are all leftovers of the violent business of the great decolonializing century. And Russia is not decolonialized, and China is not decolonialized, and even America apparently is not decolonialized. So it could be His Holiness identifying with the sixth Dalai Lama. They both had to leave Tibet at the age of 24. His Holiness remained a monk because that was important at that time. He did not making a Dharma-Raja dynasty. The other one didn't. But the other one went on and went in the international world, which was Mongolians and Chinese, and he continued to help them and pacify them. And he was involved, according to that book, with the Dalai Lama of Mongolia, the Kalka Jetsun Dampa, the continuation of the sixth Dalai Lama, according to the book that Dalai Lama wanted me to read, His Holiness wanted me to read. And so from the 1730s, there was a beautiful, peaceful century for Tibet. But it didn't start at 1700. It started in the 1730s, and sixth Dalai Lama lived to 1746. So His Holiness is determined to live, actually his old teacher of the White Tara teaching in Tibet, he used to tell Tibetans this, not Westerners, but he used to tell Tibetans that he could live till 120. Actually, not just 113. He used to say that to Tibetans to encourage them. But, you know, White Tara, longevity, yoga, I can see his Samdhin Rinpoche in Tibet told him he could make it to 120, he said. And I'm sure he could. And I'm sure he'll make 113 if he has to. But who wants to live in a creepy body like I'm 84? I wouldn't mind a nice new fresh body with a nice mom in a good neighborhood. And a dad who wasn't mean, I wouldn't mind. So why is he's only staying because he represents Tibetan hope, you know, until the Chinese Imperium decides that soft power is more powerful than hard power in the current world, you know, in the information age, so to speak, you know. And what better soft power could China have than being nice to the Dalai Lama? And then the Dalai Lama saying, well, we'll get along with all those white people. And which white people are the Chinese most scared of? The Americans? The British? No. The Russians. What border is the Russian Empire and China? And Vladivostok, who did it belong to in 1850? China. Manchus had to give it up to the Tsar. So, you know, that's a big thing of our age. And the Tibetans are the great bridge between Whitey and the Sinitic, what are they? What color is it? Yellow? It's not really yellow. Yeah, you know, but they say yellow peril, you know, like, you know, Asian people, in other words. That's the great bridge between Indo-European people and the Chinese-speaking people, you know, Chinese-influenced people, you know. Tibet is a bridge between them, with a language modeled on Sanskrit, but the spoken language connecting to Burmese and even Chinese. A lot of loan words from China, in fact. So that's a great bridge of understanding between them, is Tibet. Great gift of Tibet. All right? So we can make friends with all the Asian people properly, and they can make friends with those weird-looking two-legged rabbits with the weird blue eyes. All right? So great Vajradhara. So therefore, all of you should feel the closeness of His Holiness. Because Mahavajradhara is everywhere, you know. When you become, who do you think Buddha is? Do you think Buddha is a separate guy? By the way, I only discovered maybe after 40 years or 30 years of study, parinirvana does not mean final nirvana. There's no final nirvana. Nirvana is forever. There's no final. It's the biggest anticlimax you can think of, apparently, to become enlightened. It's a huge anticlimax. Whoops! You know, Shakyamuni Buddha's under the tree there, He's like stressing away, Zen, meditating. I'm not going to get up until I'm enlightened. Oh, whoops. I suddenly remembered infinite previous lives. When I was a dinosaur, when I was a rabbit, when I was a this and that, when I was a woman, when I was a whatever, angel or God, when I was in hell. Infinite past lives. And he saw all other beings. And then once he knows he has infinite past lives, you all have infinite past lives, everybody else does. And that's why we've all been each other's mothers, right? Am I right? Were you my mama? I apologize. I probably bit your nipple. And I was your mother, and I forgive you. Okay? Ouch. Don't do that. The brat, And so that means if you become a Buddha, it must be really weird. I mean, everybody in this room right now, you are locked up inside your skin. And you're looking out through your senses, and you're hearing through your ears, and smelling and tasting. Well, you had dinner earlier, I hope. And tasting and touching and sitting in your chair. And you're different from everybody else in this room, right? And even that's the paranoid aspect of the truth of suffering. You are the main person here as far as you're concerned. You're responsible for yourself being here, right? But you know that nobody else thinks you're the main person here. In fact, on top of that, they think they're the main person here. But they forgive you and you forgive them naturally. But, this is the problem of ordinary people. But if you're Buddha, you're everybody simultaneously. The empathy, total. That must be really weird. I'm looking at you, one of the best humored nuns I've met lately. You're also a comedian, thank goodness. And yet, I think you're over there, and I'm over here. What would it be if I was you at the same time, looking at myself? Well, even one person. And technically a Buddha is everybody. That's why actually in the Avatamsaka Sutra, somebody told me they listened to me reading the Avatamsaka Sutra. I forgot who it was. Somebody was here. And I read 87 sessions of the whole Buddha Avatamsaka. Oh, that was you, right? Because the translator was a dear friend of mine. But it also blew my mind reading it. I mean, it's unbelievable that, when Jaina Buche and his 8 disciples who were doing their 5-year retreat, that was the one sutra they had with them, by the way. I'm sure they had Prajnaparamita actually, but they don't mention that because they had Nagarjuna. But the one sort of regular sutra was the Flower Ornament Sutra, what in English is called the Flower Ornament Sutra, Buddha Avatamsaka, Do Pelchen in Tibetan. Huge long collection of things. Has the Dasha Bhumika, it has many sutras within it. It's amazing. It's like an ocean. It is the sutra, Prajnaparamita is the sutra of the profound view lineage, right? You have here Manjushri on this side, I'm sure it's on this side, and you have Maitreya on that side. So profound view lineage is the Manjushri, and that's the Prajnaparamita Sutra, or all of them, all 18 of them. And on this side is the Buddha Avatamsaka Sutra. The magnificent path and the magnificent deeds of all the bodhisattvas. It's an unbelievable thing. It really is incredible. I mean, it's the way of opening the imagination without Tantra, but so powerfully. It's incredible. It's really amazing, that sutra. So I forgot what I was talking about. Mahavajradhara Buddha. Oh yeah, so he's here. He's here with you. When you're meditating, he's there. He's emanating as over different gurus. And if you're Nyingma, Sakya, Kagyu, Gelug, if you're Pure Land or whatever, it's still Avalokiteshvara, 1,000 arms, 1,000 eyes means everywhere. Gangla Gangdul Dela Titamba, that poem to Avalokiteshvara. Chazong Kolo Juvi Javo Tang. Chentong Kava Sampo Sanjay Dang Gangla Gangdu Dela Ditamba Tamba Chenesilla So one lap. So we invoke the teacher Avalokiteshvara, who is the 1,000 arms of the 1,000 wheel turning kings, the good prime ministers, that means the good leaders, the good presidents, the good kings, even if there occasionally are one or two, who don't get carried away with the megalomania. And then the 1,000 eyes of the 1,000 Buddhas of this good aeon that we live in, where Shakyamuni is the fourth. And there's another 995 to go. Don't worry, nobody's going to nuke us. They're not going to boil the planet on oil out of existence. They're going to try. They are trying, but they won't succeed. And that's whoever manifests, whatever educates whomsoever, if you make it polite, if you make it in Tibetan, who manifests whatsoever, tames whomsoever, considering that an unenlightened person is a little bit like a wild ego, needs to tame their own egos, like to make them serviceable, let's say. So that's the Mahavajradhara. And then the gift of the Tantras. The Tantra is so amazing. You all love it? You all love Tantra? Maybe you're a little scared of it, some of you? Like, oh, gee whiz, Tantra? And maybe you're not sure quite what it is. But what Tantra really is technology. That's really tech, Wisdom and technology, Wisdom is female, and technology is male. Method, or art. And actually, method is wrong. It's really art. We have universities of arts and sciences, and the arts are the technology of doing something. Medicine, even law is a technology of mediating conflict between people. So Buddhism has both sides. It's not just wisdom. It's not just meditating. It's technology, and Tantra is a super technology. And what is the super technology? It's Buddhist neuroscience. No wonder he likes to talk to neuroscientists. Indestructible drop, the 5 Buddhas of the 5 aggregates, the 5 chakras, or sometimes 7 in Kala Chakra, there are 7 of them. And how do you occupy your own subtle body? And what is your subtle mind? That's your subconscious. And how do they analyze the subconscious? The 80 instincts, which these people call sort of natural concepts or something. The translators are not translated properly, actually, yet, except me. Don't worry, I'm sorry, but I do. It's instincts, like the unconscious. Freud discovered eros and thanatos, right? That's lust and hate, or greed and anger, But the one Freud didn't discover because he wouldn't imagine that a Western person would have ignorance, which is not really just passive ignorance, it's misknowing. It's misunderstanding. And that the Greek one is Aletheia, I think. She's a goddess and she drives Zeus crazy. So that's a third one that Freud didn't discover. But it's unconscious, right? So do you think the Buddhists didn't know about the unconscious? That's another naughty thing that Mahavajradhara said at a lecture in Goa University in India that I was lucky to be. I'm sure he's done other naughty things. Actually did a very naughty thing here in London when he received the Templeton Prize. He likes to be naughty. He did a naughty thing in Woodstock when he gave a talk in New York State, in Woodstock where I live. He was about to give a talk in the town common, and he looked over here and saw the cemetery. And when he first got the mic, instead of starting to talk, he looked over there like that, and all the people were watching, and he said, "Oh, good." He says, "Final destination." So everybody has a little reminder they're going to die, to kind of just open their mind to listen intently to whatever else he would be teaching. That's a little naughty, When he received Templeton Prize, a few people gave some rather pompous speeches before his acceptance speech. So he was kind of impatient. He wanted to go home, I think, and take a nap. He sleeps early, right, and gets up early. So he was a little impatient. So when he finally got up to all the pompous Templeton, blah, 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 and actually even he didn't even want to give a talk. He said to the secretary, "Give me my check. I want to give the check." And he gave away all the money right away. And he wanted to do that, and the secretary wouldn't give it to him. I said, "You can't have it until you give a talk to acceptance speech." So he was holding back the briefcase. He gave $1.5 million, I forget in pounds, a little different sum, but he gave to the Save the Children Foundation, earmarked for malnourished children in India. 1.5, and he gave 200,000 to the scientists. In dollars, it was 1.7 million. So he gave it away instantly. That way he was thrilled and excited to give it. And of course, the secretaries weren't quite so thrilled. Like, whoops, we're refugees. Whoops, where we go? But he said when the Tibetans came out in India first, the children were starving, and the Save the Children Foundation fed them. And he'd always wanted to give them back something to feed other malnourished children. So he immediately gave the money away. Anyway, then he had to give a little talk. So he gave a talk. And then the talk, but before he gave the talk, when he had the microphone, he was in the St. Paul's Cathedral downtown there in London. And he kind of looked up and he said, magnificent big temple, he said. And then he said, although I understand Hitler's missiles sort of found the range. And of course everybody had instant amnesia about it, but it was a little tiny thought of impermanence and a little tweak to the idea of like pomposity and magnificence, reality. A little reality. Was it true? Do you know, maybe you don't know the history. Did they bomb that cathedral during the war? They never hit it? Somebody had told him maybe it was hit by missiles. What?
There's a lovely photograph in the Blitz. Everything's burning except
Oh, it was survived. So Hitler, he was mistaken then. Hitler didn't find the range. Well, he just wanted to tweak people. That's his naughtiness, you see. That's where he likes to a little bit. That's his Zelensky nature, His Holiness. Great leader of Tibetan people. Great leader of the free world, His Holiness. Mahavajradhara. After all, what does Buddha want, Mahavajradhara? What a Buddha wants is what everybody wants, because the Buddha feels he is everybody. And what does everybody want? What do you want? To be free. Does anybody like to be somebody's slave or servant or dominated or domineered by somebody? Does anybody really like that? Well, maybe there's a few weird people that can go through the motions, but ultimately, even if they do temporarily, they like to choose who does it. So they want to be free, So that's what Mahavajradhara wants. They want us all to be free. That's why even, one thing I praise His Holiness. Another thing I'm praising. We are doing something this weekend. We're doing a retreat with my colleague John Campbell, who's a great yogi from the Mysore Yoga School, as well as a PhD in Buddhist studies from Columbia. And he's really good. He's one of the few translators who can handle the language of Rinpoche, Tsongkhapa, who has particularly kind of complex sentences, and it's one of the hardest people to translate, because especially his Madhyamaka Uma, very difficult. Or Guru Samaja, his Chendel, I'm working on the Chendel, the Dronselgi Chendel of Rinpoche, chapters 1 through 12. I will be publishing this next year. And his Raptiso Drama also, his Dronsel, his commentary on the Dzogchen. And anyway, we're doing a retreat called Vajra Yoga. And I've been kind of invented in parallel with His Holiness what we call Vajra Yoga. And what that is the subtle body technology without making distinction between Hinduism or Buddhism or Judaism or Christianity or Islam or secularism. Like His Holiness, he says proudly, I don't know if you ever heard him say it in a lecture here, because you guys are Buddhists, this is a Buddhist center, but His Holiness always says in large scale that I'm not advocating for you to be Buddhist. He has told 4 popes and all kinds of rabbis and even Muslims in India, it's too late in history, it's too dangerous, it's a wrong time for world religions, even if you think Buddhism is a religion, which it isn't only, but it's too late to compete for market share. Although he doesn't use that term, that's my term, but compete for followers and convert each other's followers. and he's very strict about it. In the movie he made, in the interview he did for the David Bohm movie, he very clearly says that in my entire career of teaching over decades, I have never taught Buddhist knowledge with the motive of converting anybody to Buddhism. And believe me, he used to tease me, like a one-eyed person. He used to tease me that I should be a Christian because my grandmother was a Christian. And so I was so in love with Buddhism, I refused. Until lately, and now I like to say I'm a Chrisboo. Because, Buddha and Jesus wouldn't have had a problem, actually. And they would have been quite delighted to share the burden. Why should one person have to deal with all of the weirdos? So I agree with that. And so there has to be a way in which, however, you can learn from other traditions the special knowledge that he has. And he sent over the decades, he sent monks and nuns to Christian monasteries, in the U.S. and here in Europe as well, I believe, in order to learn sort of the Christian activism. He likes that they make hospitals, schools, they do more social service things. And he told me once, and with a little kind of humorous frustration, that he had once told the head patriarch of Thai Buddhism that they should really do more social service, like the Christian missionaries and other people do. The Buddhists should get out of their monasteries and do a little more social service, otherwise they're likely to face communists who will overthrow the Sangha, But then the guy answered him and said, I'm sorry, we do not even pick up a needle to sew our robe. We wouldn't even pick up a needle. That's against the Vinaya, which it is, actually. It was in ancient time, to make sure that the Buddhist mendicant was not used for work, by the rulers or by anybody, that they had complete freedom to develop their minds, So they made it like that strict. Buddha did, the rules of the mendicants. But in the modern time, His Holiness thinks that's important to do things, for people, He wants to make that reform, As well as the Geshe-ma thing, which I think is very, very good. Are you Geshe-ma? Did you study that? I think you must be, by nature, having to handle everybody. So Mahavajradhara, so that's the story. And it's nice, Lama gives initiation, and that initiation, then you have to, so then you can think, well, it's all His Holiness, And I must say, I'm in my elder age. There is time I can get in a certain mood when I'm trying to behave myself, when my wife has told me that I should, and I try to do so, although I'm very imperfect still. And I see things that seem to have been misfortunes in my life. I see them as actually being fortunate, actually, and I feel very, very greatly blessed. And that I've been very, very lucky. And because I've met the great Vajradhara, and instead of, that idea, well, Jesus was a long time ago, and like in America, but He'll come back later and it's going to kill everybody. Actually, there's a danger that Kalachakra Shambhala can be wrongly interpreted that way, by the way. We should be careful about it. But my point is, waiting, so it's imperfect time now. But actually, if we think of Buddha as still here, and padi doesn't mean final, but it's not a time word. Padi means thorough, total. It's not a temporal thing. In other words, that isn't Buddha's final. Buddha was not, Shakyamuni was not the Lone Ranger. Who is that masked man? He came and taught the Dharma and then he left us behind. After he made Bodhisattva vow, he wouldn't become enlightened until everybody was enlightened. No, he left that body to teach impermanence. Amitabha always stays in his body in Pure Land, like Shobhya and Abhirati stays in his body in Pure Land. He can stay as long as he wants, because he's aware, his consciousness and his material cells are the same thing. For the subtle mind of a Buddha is all their body, They know everything with their body, as well as with their mind, That's what that's the chakra system. That's the subtle body, Tsa Lung Tigle, channels, energies, and drops, which are neurotransmitters, So that's the neuroscience area. And the yogi, Buddhist yogi, at the advanced perfection stages, once they were qualified, and not to go crazy with the visualizing or something, or get trapped in a psychosis that, like we once had a person who was considered himself a yogi, and they announced in one summer school that we held, I'm a Buddhist yogi and I have a vow and I don't wash dishes. He was really not popular, actually. So Buddha is a being that is from the toenail they're enlightened, and they also are everybody else, So this is why we're so blessed. We're so lucky. Look at you. You're here in this room. I'm annoying you. I'm sure you're tired. You'd probably like to take a nap. And I'm just some weirdo from New York. But we're all blessed by having known His Holiness Dalai Lama. I have a dear friend now, a new dear friend, Murray. He's a scientist for Google. He's a genius philosopher and a Wittgensteinian. And he met His Holiness for the first time in Dharamsala recently at a Mind and Life thing, and he was shocked because there was a line, and people were going by, and some people were just kind of going by with a wave and a thing, and when His Holiness saw him, he was like, His Holiness gave him the whammy look, and he felt suddenly like he was one with somebody maybe, or he was a little shocked about it, but his happy look is here. That's Murray, Professor Murray Shanahan, I should say. I'll introduce him all to you. Wonderful man, my new friend. And so we're blessed and lucky that there's a Mahavajradhara. In other words, he didn't disappear. He's not off in some Pure Land someplace only. He's everywhere, And so we can find a blessing in everything if we make an effort. Even some irritating person like a illegal president, or even who is putting all the criminals to enforce the law. We're in that crazy situation, actually, in the United States. I don't think it's quite that here, luckily. You're lucky for the moment. But that is the crazy situation. And which is good it must be good, but I haven't found the blessing quite yet. But I will, I think. So that's really what Mahavajradhara means. So don't be sad that Dalai Lama can't travel. You can go to Dharamsala and see him in a line. Now he doesn't take so much private audiences because they protect him very much. But he's here with you. He's here with your leader. And he's over here. It's nice Lama here. And he's here with all of us. Don't you think? Do you feel that he might be present around here? I think so. He's here with Yixing Awang. Oh, I wanted to help you. Do you all know His Holiness's name mantra? Can you all recite it? I thought, do you mind if I teach you that mantra? Om Mahavajradhara, Manju Shri Vakindra, Bhattaraka Sumati Jnana, Shasanadara, Samudra, Shri Bhadra, Sarvasiddhi, Hum. Are you okay? Again, Om Guru. I'm sorry. Om Vajraguru. Manju Shri Vakindra. Bhattaraka Sumati Jnana. Shasanadara Samudra. Shri Bhadra. Sarvasiddhi. Hum. Om Vajaguru, Manju Shri Vakindra, Bhattaraka Sumati Jnana, Shasanadara Samudra, Shribhadra, Savasiddhi, Hum, Homa Guru Vajradhara, Manjushri Bhakindra, Bhattaraka Sumati Jnana, Shasanadara Samudra, Shribhadra Sarvasiddhi Hum. I love it myself nowadays because there's a shorter version that doesn't have the Bhattaraka. And it doesn't have the Sumati Jnana, it just has Sumati. Because Sumati means Losang, you know, and Shasanadara Samudra means Tenzin Gyatso. Shasanadara Samudra, so they make it shorter, you know. It's his name in Sanskrit. And if you repeat that, then he's there, you know. And don't be like Marpa. You know, Marpa, if you get some initiation, you know, remember Marpa's big mistake? Do you remember what it was? When he went back one time to find Naropa, it's the second round, or he had 2 different rounds, you know. He was there with Marpa, was sitting on some hillside, and he came up toward Marpa, and then Mahavajradhara was there, dancing Shiva like Mahavajradhara. So Marpa said, well, who do you salute first, me or Mahavajradhara? And Marpa said, oh, I see you all the time, Guruji, you know, with your jockstrap, you know, dhoti, you know, like, no, the Guru, the Lama first. The Lama has all of the different mandalas in there, chakras, you know. So that was Marpa's big mistake, they say, that he blew it. He should have saluted his Guru first and then his emanation as Mahavajradhara, you know. So if you learn that mantra and add, I didn't even know, recently in Woodstock, the Tashikil Labrang from Amdo founded kind of a chapter house there, you know, like some of the different monasteries have different chapter houses in different parts of America, you know, and they come with their tours, you know, and then the monks hang out there, this kind of thing, you know. They're not trying to convert us, but they're coming. And Dalai doesn't mind that lamas heaven, that somebody becomes a Buddhist. But he used to scold me, don't be snotty about Christians, it's because you're now Buddhist, you know. You shouldn't scold a one-eyed person for only having one, because they didn't have the other. It kind of nails me, doesn't it? and so he even walked his talk with me, you know. And I'm trying to do now better, you know. I am trying to be better. But I can't match up with him, though. I'm much too rude and whatever, rude. And I really get mad about materialism and nothingness, you know. People who think nothing is something, they have to be a little cracked, you know. I'm going to be nothing. I mean, what a cop-out, you know. And then it's very bad for young people. In America nowadays, the suicide rate among the young is very, very high, way too high. Because they think they solve their problems that way, and it doesn't matter because they're just going to be nothing. Meanwhile, they go like that, and then they end the bardo with the one huge headache. Their dream body has a really sore head. Okay, well, how long are we? Okay, what's going on? I can go on. So the mandala is here, our opportunity is here, you know. In a way, the great thing about Tibetan Buddhism is not that it's Vajrayana. There are more people with Theravada vows in Tibet, there were before the Chinese invasion, than there are in all of Sri Lanka. You know, because the monk vow is a Theravada vow, it's a Mula Sarvastivada vow, or the nun's vow. It's not a Mahayana, there's not a Mahayana monk vow. The Mahayana have Bodhisattva vow, but the individual liberation vow, Patimoksha vow, is Theravada. So they have Theravada, but they really respect it. Tsongkhapa made a huge fuss about it, not being attaining magic body. What weird people call it illusory body. I don't call it illusion body or illusory body. I call it magic body. You know, we can say in English, illusionist is a magician. So Maya, Buddha's mom, his name is Maya. She's not Mrs. Illusion. She's Mrs. Magic. She produces a Buddha. So don't be rude and call it illusion body. It's a magic body. And to achieve magic body, you do need in advanced tantra some sort of partner, especially if you're male. But even if you're female, you need some weird guy. For some reason, at the very top level, it could be a wisdom one. It doesn't have to be flesh and blood. It doesn't mean it's not a license to go around molesting people, which we've seen a little bit too much of, haven't we? So it's not like, but it is still the male-female balance thing, you know, at some stage. Because the female, I'm sorry guys, the female is the wisdom. The male is technology, but technology without knowing what's going on can be destructive. On the other hand, the wisdom without the technology cannot help the beings, you know. So somehow, you know, to become Buddha, it's like, you know, in some versions of monotheism, where's Mrs. God? What happened to her? She became a ghost? No wonder God gets cranky. Come on. The Shekinah comes back. At least the Jewish people have a nice time on Friday night. Oh, by the way, Shabbat Shalom. Is today Friday? Yes. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. And Shekinah is back. But then she has to go away again. And the patriarchs take over. And that's where now coming. His Holiness Mahavajradhara, do you know what he said? Next life, I very well might be female. He said, and then they got all worked up because he said, in that case, I'd be much more beautiful. And he made a fashion gesture because, of course, he said it in Italy. So he goes like this. And then people got mad, oh, he has to be beautiful, he's such a male chauvinist. But actually, he just made more beautiful than funky old me, old Tibetan Dalai Lama male. Because the women are beautiful. They're more beautiful, let's face it. Guys, we can be handsome, you know, when we're younger. But in general, women are more beautiful. I'm sorry, they are. They're more compassionate, automatically. They do the hard job of the really hard labor. That's the labor, which I ran the other way. I told the doctor a couple of times, give me the spinal block. If she doesn't want it, I want it. So he said, the reason he said it, he says, Mahavajradhara, we need examples of female leadership because they're less inclined to violence in a crisis than the male. You know, it's oxytocin versus cortisol, and the oxytocin is highly preferable in a crisis than the dumb cortisol, right? Charge, you know. Instead it's like, where are we? What are we going to do? What can we talk about now? Let's figure it out. What are our resources? What's going on? That's wisdom, right? Well, you guys all know that, don't you? You do. You do. You just don't let your guy see you smile when it's whenever it mentions how behind the 8 ball we all are. She looks very intelligent. All right, so question. Anybody have a question? I think I talked enough. So anyway, please learn that mantra. We'll write it down. And learn it in the long form with Bhattaraka. Manjushri Bhakti. Om Vajraguru Manjushri Bhakindra. He's a Bhakindra. He's a Yeshe. He's a Jnana Bhakindra. Bhakindra means Wangel, you know. You know, Bhakindra. The Indra of speech, that is Ngawang, and Ngawang, right? And so Manjushri Bhakindra, and then Bhattaraka. I was so pleased that it's covered that one. It means like Kyabgon. I think it's Kyabgon in Tibetan. So Bhattaraka Sumatinyana. So the good mind intuition, Jnana, they go gnosis, people go, but nobody knows what gnosis is. It's intuition. And my philosophical Buddhist translator friends get really mad with me. They say, you say jnana is intuition? What are you talking about? That can't be wisdom. Women have intuition. I say, yes, precisely. In other words, that means immediately knowing something. And that's what jnana is in that case, you know. So, sumati jnana, then Shasanadara, Samudra, Shribhadra, you know, that's Tenzin Gyatso. Shribhadra is Kunsang, you know, or, you know, Pelsangpo, you know. And then Sarvasiddhi, may all his wishes be fulfilled. Hum. Right? And the hum means he's right in your heart, Mahavajradhara. He's not just up in the sky, over in Dhamsala, somewhere in the path. He's right in your heart when you try to be kind, as he says, you know. Common human religion of kindness, even you're not a Buddhist. A religion of kindness. You know, that's where he is in the heart, right? Right? Is that okay? Is it all right, everybody? So what's the question?
Okay, does anyone have any questions in the room for Professor Thurman?
I have, with my hearing, it's very hard to hear someone in a crowd, even with the mic. So, okay, so, what, you don't have a question?
No, I'm just going to...
Oh, you're giving the hand. Oh, yeah, you have a question.
Thank you, Professor.
Yes.
Can you just say again Bhattaraka, the etymology of the word? Bhattaraka, the etymology of that word in His Holiness, his name mantra. Bhattaraka. Manjushri.
Manjushri?
Bhattara.
Bhajra?
No, Bhattaraka.
What's Bhajra?
In the name mantra.
Oh, Oma Guru Vajradhara.
Keep going.
Manjushri Vakindra. Bhattaraka.
That one.
Bhattaraka. The retroflex. Chi. Long A. Raka. Bhattaraka.
Bhattaraka.
Bhattaraka. Sumati Dhyana. Then the Sumati, the Losang, Dhyana is Yishe. Okay, that's his whole long name, you know. But the Bhattaraka is usually left out of the short one. And then when they say Sumati, they go Sumati Shasanadara. They don't put Sumati Jnana Shasanadara. So that's it. The Jnana and the Bhattaraka make it the long mantra.
But the Bhattaraka, what does it mean?
Chabgon. Refuge, savior.
Okay.
What people will say for Gon is protector, because, you know, we get nervous if you say savior about a bodhisattva or a Buddha, because there's only one in our culture, you know. So, but that thing, Gombo doesn't just mean like a Mahakala or something. It means a savior. But of course, he's a savior by telling us, you got to save yourself. And that's a kind of saving, you know. Bhattaraka. So Bhattaraka is very, in Bengal, the great Indian pundits had that kind of Bhattaraka. They use that word, you know. And I think in Tibetan it's Kyapgon. Kyap, you know, refuge, and Gon is savior. Refuge, savior. Refugee, savior. Okay.
And then, thank you. And then a follow-up.
Bhattaraka Sumati Jnana Shasanadara Samudra Shribhadra Sarvasiddhi Hum. May all his wishes be fulfilled. That's what we're trying to do, you know.
Thank you.
All of us.
And then,
and you know, and the sixth Dalai Lama, who he identifies with, he did a lot of stuff in Mongolia according to Tibetan's belief, although the Anglo professors, they will not agree, but he did. But the Lama scooped him up out of the poison tent of the Lasang Khan, and there was a huge typhoon, and they did the whole thing, and they couldn't even find the body. And then remember, before that, he'd sent an emanation to come to Litang for the black crane, lend me your wings, you know, I'll come back soon to Lhasa, you know. That was Kelsang Gyatso, the seventh Dalai Lama, not a local Kelsang Gyatso we know about, but the seventh Dalai Lama, and the late one. And so it took another 30 years, or another 20 or 30 years for a good, better, that's calmed down the different factions of the Mongolians and the Manchus. And also in the Yungcheng Emperor after Kangxi, who was the one who allowed Hassan Khan to depose the sixth Dalai Lama because he wasn't a monk, the Yungcheng Middle Emperor couldn't control all kinds of Chinese generals, and they burned down a lot of Mongolian monasteries and Amdo monasteries. They burned down tons of them, and then he rebuilt them a lot. And I'm angling, I haven't, but my fiction will have him involved in the birth of the Jangkyalolwe Dorje, if you know that history, who was a student of seventh, and then sort of colleague student close to his in age, and who became almost a teacher and brought in the eighth, and also was a schoolmate of the Qianlong emperor who ruled for 60 years, and they translated the entire Tengyur into Mongolian and made a new Kangyur in Manchu language, and got the emperor to edit it, sort of at least nominally. So then, like the Manchus really supported, and it was very peaceful for the Mongols. And the Mongolians finally got peaceful and kind of cooled down and adopted the Om Mani Padme Hum type of culture. And they had a nice century there until then the Western, all the colonial powers came in and of course wasted everybody. And then that caused us all to have everywhere Mahavajradhara. Some little niches here and there in New York and London, out there in the old courthouse. It was a Mahavajradhara. And do you know the name of Harvard in Chinese? It was given in the 19th century. It's called Hafo Daxue. I studied Chinese, Hafo Daxue, right? And Hafo is phonetic, 2 syllables, Hafo, like Harvard, Hafo. In the Yenching Institute in the 19th century, they selected 2 phonetic characters, and just by accident, the Zelensky of the day picked the word ha, which means to laugh, and fo means a Buddha. So even the name of Harvard is the University of Laughing Buddha in Chinese, and nobody knows that. I like it, half without swear.
Sorry.
Was that the question?
That was the question, and then some.
What?
And then some more, actually. Okay. But there was another question about the Vimalakirti Sutra. Vimalakirti.
Oh, Vimalakirti. Yes. Have you ever read the Vimalakirti Sutra, everybody? I did a translation of it. I was so blessed. Oh, I'm sorry. What's the question? Yeah.
Well, what you were describing today about His Holiness's blessing being everywhere reminded me of the part where the Buddha touches his toe to the ground and the purification of the Buddha
well.
field.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
Do you want me to tell that story?
Yes. Okay. Yes, please.
Yes. So there's a sutra called Vimalakirti Sutra. The Vimalakirti Nirdesha Sutra, actually, which is one of those sutras like the Heart Sutra, where the main speaker is not Shakyamuni, although Shakyamuni is at the beginning and the end, but the main thing is in the house of Vimalakirti. And Vimalakirti is like a Doctor Who, actually, before you had Doctor Who here in England, in the sense that thousands of people who are in the audience of Shakyamuni out in the suburb. He's staying with a movie star, the equivalent of a movie star, Amrapali, in the suburb, in a grove that she had, mango grove, with 500 monks and thousands of bodhisattvas, like in a sutra. But then the action takes place in Vimalakirti's house, because Buddha sends everybody, well, actually he tries to send people, and many monks won't go because they don't want to meet Vimalakirti, because they tell a story how he scolded them in the past and they don't like it. Layman, I mean, he's respectful to them as monks, but he always gives them a little something about some mental issue. And but anyway, in the first chapter, Buddha is there in Amrapali's grove, and the elders of the city, like the mayor and the big shots, are not going to listen to him because he accepted the invitation to stay in the grove of Amrapali, who was a movie star, And they're mad. They wanted him to come and be in the mayor's, like palace, and then they would all be importantly meeting the Buddha and all this. But whenever the first person who reached him to ask, "Stay with me, I'll be the host for the monks," he would nod and say, "Yes, I'm coming." That was Shakyamuni's habit. So he was staying there. So then the young people came though. And then they came with the jeweled parasols, and they put the jeweled parasols down in front of Buddha as offerings. And then he made a planetarium out of them. He did a piece of performance art, and he fabricated a kind of planetarium, which when they looked at it, they saw sort of the interconnected ecology of the universe. The relativity of the universe, which, as I said, is what the meaning of emptiness is. It's relativity, Like shunya, shunya was the Indian word for zero, and they had the decimal counting, add a zero, they used zero in their mathematics, and the Europeans didn't learn that until the 8th century. That's so funny, how they, big smart Romans, they were just going XV, no zero, poor guys. So anyway, so then the Bodhisattvas, they were that's a great vision, we love it, we had a great vision, thank you so much. And then they say, and by the way, we have a question, what's the question? Well, we already want to be Bodhisattvas, and we want to be enlightened, and we're out to do it. But one thing we can't figure out? How do you create and make beautiful the Buddha land? They said, how do you change the whole world, in other words, right? Bodhisattva says, I won't be Buddha in Nirvana until everybody is a Buddha. So you have to change the whole world with you. So how do you do that? That's the question, So then Buddha gives a long spiel about how the Bodhisattva over 1 million lifetimes does this generous and ethical and patient and contemplative and wise and creative and so on, and all of the different paramitas, right? And then finally, therefore, his mind, everything is so pure, and he's interacted with millions of other beings, so that then when he becomes a Buddha, then they all become enlightened with him, and it's just fine. And then he gives a long spiel like that. And then Shariputra, the wise monk, thinks, wait a minute, if that's the case, and this guy Shakyamuni, my teacher here, is a Buddha, then this India and the world in 2,500 years ago is not a Buddha land, it sucks. What kind of Bodhisattva was he? Must have been a lousy Bodhisattva, he said. He didn't change the world. So then Buddha teases him a little bit and says, is it the fault of the sun and the moon that someone blind from birth cannot see them? And he says, no, it isn't, of course. And then Brahma, who's present, God, that's who other Indian people thought was God, who always comes to Buddha's lectures and teachings and presence, he scolds Shariputra and says, I see it as just perfect, it's a perfect world, what are you talking about? And then she scolds Shariputra. Yeah, you see it that way, says Shariputra, but I don't see it that way, and so I can't get it. I don't get it. So then Buddha, this is what Rinpoche is saying here, is Buddha takes his toe, which presumably he's not wearing a sock, and he just touches the ground with his big toe, and suddenly everybody present in the whole assembly, which is a huge bunch of people, they all suddenly realize they're in the perfect place in an evolutionary sense for their own awakening and ripening and enlightening and whatever you want to call it. They realize that they're very blessed in a perfect world for them, just how they are, and whatever's happening to them is whatever their learning experience is that they need. And somehow they also feel lifted out of this whole horrible thing that we live in, where we're trying to be in the moment, and meanwhile you can never find the present moment. It keeps eluding you as the past runs right into the future. And has no duration, the present moment, so you can never find it. It's like a point on a graph, it has no size. So suddenly they feel lifted out of that into kind of a timeless kind of thing, and they realize for whatever their embodiment, for whatever their understanding, for whatever their circumstances, it's a perfect situation, and they see it as a Buddha land, which in the sutra they say everything is made of like jewel plasma. everything red is ruby, flowing ruby, everything they make, because that's something of value, like a jewel, So then they go, wow, and then they tell the Shariputra, okay, how does it look now? Shariputra says, oh, wow, it's really great, no problem. And then everybody does, and then Buddha picks his foot up, and then it looks like an ordinary world again. So he just gives like a hint like that. But what this means, though, is we're already in a Buddha land. This is a Pure Land right now, here and now. I think the Manjushri Institute, or Jamyang Gompa, or whatever you call it, Dharma Center, is maybe a little more Pure Land than some sort of like coffee shop downtown. But actually the whole thing is a Pure Land. So that means, and that's a very dreadful kind of thing can be easily misunderstood. Because of course there are horrible holocausts that do take place, horrible. People die and get killed, they kill each other, all kind of seemingly unjust, terrible things happen. But on the other hand, it's a flow of life. Nobody, you know that, don't you? From the Tibetan so-called Book of the Dead is very badly misnamed, because I translated it myself after a while because my guru told me I should, although there already were some translations. But what was my big lesson from translating it? When someone asked me later when the book was there, what did you learn? And what I realized is there's no dead people. Nobody's dead. Nobody ever dies. You're not going to die. Well, it's like you leave this room and you go through the door. But when are you ever in the door? Are you ever in the door? No, you're in this room and then in that room. So we imagine death is like a state opposite life, and we project it in the fact that we can be unconscious when we sleep. And actually we love sleeping. If we fail to sleep, we take an Ambien or something, or we take a lot of nutmeg, and we try to sleep, or do yoga nidra or something, because we have to sleep, and that's the opposite of being awake, we think. So we imagine death is an infinite sleep. All the commentaries are called heavenly rest and sleep forever, blah, 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 eternal sleep. But death is not that. Death is just this indestructible drop, the supercellular body-mind decides to leave the cellular nervous system. And that's a POA, POA? Hick! You shoot it up out of your forehead or top of your head. If you're lucky, you don't dribble out of your fingertip, but even if you're dead, you wouldn't get lost, really. So nobody stays dead. And that's another, I recommend another book of mine. You asked me, it's called Infinite Life. And it has a really stupid subtitle, because they were so mad that I chose the title of Infinite Life. They tried to stop me from doing so, that they took away my subtitle. My subtitle was Breaking Free from the Terminal Lifestyle, which is the materialist one, where you're going to grab everything in this life because that's all you're ever going to be. You're just a body. You're a robot whose brain is tricking you into thinking you exist. That's what they tell you. That's what they sell you. The natural science, so-called natural scientists, they get a little dogmatic, They have great observations that they do. So nobody gets to die. You just do body switching. And therefore, you should prepare yourself. How do you body switch? How do you make a body? What would be the body? You visualize what would be the best kind of body you could have. And that's technology, that's Tantra. That's what Tantra is. And you don't have to visualize that you have 20 arms and do all kind of weird things unless you're going to be in a really tough environment, neighborhood. You could just have two and be beautiful. A male could imagine they're going to be female. A female could imagine she will be male, whatever. And of course, then you have to find a mom and dad who are going to cooperate. And there's therefore there are three people at conception, not just two. The subtle little body-mind, which is both energy and mind, lurks around, goes up and down Fifth Avenue, Madison Avenue, I'm used to being in America, or whatever, Lancaster Terrace, or whatever it might be. And actually you can see through walls, so you see a lot of people getting it on. And then you pick a nice couple, if you're going to be human, and bam, you're right there. And then, of course, she has to take care of you for almost a year. She has to get you out of there somehow. Then she has to take care of you for around 50 years, actually. Usually, unfortunately. Not even just a teenage. And he has to pay tuition. Like it's going to be $1 million at Hartford, Austria, by the time that in another minute, until we have a good government, and then it will be free. But you'll have to pass the entrance exam. And then instead of compulsory athletics and swimming pool, physical ed requirement, you'll have to become a master yogi or yogini. That will be the sport, not just football is yoga, it's military yoga. Rugby is super yoga for like men of Harlech are going to go fight with some Anglo-Saxon Vikings or somebody, some Normans. Fierce athletics is training for military, of course. It's yoga for a militarized society. So yoga for a gentle society is downward dog. Okay, that's a Pure Land. So that's a Pure Land at the moment. Yes, okay, what?
This is a bit of a digression, but
What's that?
a little bit of a digression. But speaking of the feminine principle and mistranslation,
Yes.
When it says in Genesis, in the book of Genesis, God created the heaven and the earth. Now, the word for God in Hebrew in the original Torah is Elohim.
Yeah, Elohim, yes.
Yeah, that's female. Elohim is female plural. Yeah.
Yes.
And not all people know that.
Well, I think that was going on there,
So
of course.
that's censorship.
This wonderful book that I recommend to everybody called The Golden Road about India. I learned one wonderful thing about India, from that book about the role of India. Mm-hmm. Well, where do you think the city of Ur was, where Abraham supposedly came from?
Mesopotamia.
What?
Mesopotamia?
Actually, it's right at the end of the Persian Gulf at the mouth of the Tigris.
Yeah.
And according to the speculation of this book, because they don't have the archaeology, they have found, however, archaeologists in Ur, Jewish kind of relics, as well as Buddhas. But then from the ancient level, there's the Jewish ones. And what that city was where the wealth of the Harappan civilization before the Vedic time was being traded into the Middle East, because the Indus Valley was the richest alluvium in Eurasia. It was the Garden of Eden, so it had a lot of export. As you know, and that's what that Golden Road is about how India, all the way from the Tang Dynasty in China, from Borobudur in Indonesia, and all the way to Rome. And Cicero is complaining about draining the Roman treasury of gold and silver to buy Indian spices and silks and porcelain. He's like overthrowing the kind of Silk Road. It all came from China. And he's showing how really India and the trade winds back and forth, which go one way for a whole season and then the other way for a whole season, and a huge city in the Red Sea where there's a lot of Buddhas they're digging up in Egypt there, where they were shipping stuff over to, and they would come with elephants and heaven knows what, and ship it over to Alexandria and then up to Rome. So it's like a whole different vision of that ancient time that really puts India in the middle of the evolution of Eurasia in an amazing way. And it's all through Buddhism, because the Brahmins had a thing about you can't go in the ocean and you can't trade. They don't want to do business. They're like Oxford professors, all of them, the Brahmins, and they don't want to do business. Whereas the Buddhists like the merchants, So, and there's this one rabbi wrote me, but he sent me the manuscript in PDF, but I lost it subsequently, so I can't give you detail. But he claimed, I don't know Hebrew, and I've been meaning to look this up, but YHWH, which I consider to be the Jewish genius of Judaism, that they have an unpronounceable name, which takes away a little bit the human arrogance about God is what I tell him whatever I tell you it is, and he's behind me and I can go kill everybody else, which is unfortunately what human beings do with ideas of theology and divinity. But since you can't pronounce it, you kind of a little bit can't control it, But then he wrote a book saying that, and I don't know which is which, but the YH and the WH are the male and female he, she pronouns in ancient Aramaic or Hebrew. Is that true? Do you know Hebrew?
A little bit, yeah.
He and she?
Yahweh, yeah.
Yeah, but Yahweh is adding vowels.
Yeah, that's how it,
You can't use what? The Kabbalists say the yuv, which you can't pronounce, is just you're breathing in and out.
they're both vowels.
So it's a very mystical.
They are both actually vowels.
What?
They're both actually vowels, Yah and Weh, as far as I understand, as far as I know.
Well, semivowels.
Vowel, if you
Y and
vowel,
W are semivowels,
Yeah.
but they're not really true vowels,
Yeah.
linguistically speaking. So the idea is you can't pronounce it, actually. Like,
I had
you
heard
can't
also-
say, Yahweh, come and do what I want.
I had heard also,
What?
I think this is from a rabbi, I had heard also that Yah, I may have this the wrong way around, Yah is the in-breath and Weh is the out-breath. So the word is
Well, that's
unpronounceable,
okay,
but
so
it's
you have a different
breathable
interpretation.
and it's always
What
being
is he and
breathed.
she? What is he in Hebrew and what is she in Hebrew? Third person pronoun.
I can't remember.
What?
They're normally suffixes, I think. Like El is God and Eloah is goddess.
Okay.
Eloah.
All right, I give
That's,
up.
but I'm no
Figure out.
expert, so.
But anyway, he claimed that the gender bivalence of God's name is embedded in there. This one rabbi, he sent me a book to prove that. He said he claimed he proved it, but then I didn't fully study it. But I want to, because I think that I think it's something amazing. And then also, Ur being there, it's a huge trade center then, from the beginning. And hugely involved with wealth and prosperity coming from Harappa, which was 35 times larger than the Nile alluvium, the territory of the Indus Valley and all the rivers coming from Himalaya, So that's a historic side thing. Anyway, another question. Yes, finally we get a question. What is your good name?
Thanks for the very amusing teaching.
What's
very
your name?
amusing teaching.
Who?
You're very amusing.
Very amusing. Good. That's my aspiration.
Listen to your CD.
What?
Oh, I haven't switched it.
No, it's on. It's just for the people online to hear you, Patrick.
It's my aspiration to be amusing. I'm so
No,
glad.
it's just very, makes it very nice. Anyway, I'll go on to the question.
Yes.
Niels Bohr, the inventor of quantum physics,
Bohr, yes.
Yeah, he said that mind and matter was a thing that existed in the universe.
Was it fictitious?
Yeah, no, he said he argued it with Einstein.
Yeah.
That's what the two elements of the universe were.
Mind and
matter.
Good for him.
Yeah.
I'm with him 100%.
Yeah.
And actually, even Einstein. I found 2 lectures of Einstein's, both delivered in Leiden for some reason, in which he refutes the idea that relativity, general and special theory of relativity, eliminate ether. And he says he has a version of ether that he doesn't like Lorentz, and he doesn't like Maxwell, and he doesn't like Newton's versions of ether. And he says, but ether is essential. Without that, gravity is impossible, and blah, blah, blah. He goes on and on about that in the lecture. And then this is where I really think he was a mystic. He was a super mystic. Because he says, however, my ether, you can't think of it as just energy, but it allows energy to happen, to do things, movement. You can't think of it as temperature, heat, but it allows that to happen. You can't think of it as water, but fluid, because that flows. So it's best to think of this sort of ultimate reality guarantor of all other physical processes as a solid. And he leaves that to his colleagues. Think of it as a solid. Like, accounting for spooky action at a distance sort of thing. And I consider that, like Spinoza, that is a kind of theism, actually, rather than pure materialism. And it's an inconceivability, actually, that something inconceivable allows life to occur. But he didn't want to really reveal that, because he didn't want to be thrown out of the materialist synagogue, like Spinoza was kicked out of the synagogue for saying that God is all of us. You know, that we're all God, actually, which I believe Spinoza got mystical and said that. And apparently his local rabbi felt that was too heretical, and the poor guy got kicked out of the Amsterdam or wherever he lived in Holland synagogue.
Professor.
So I think Einstein also was really looking at what we call wrongly translating clear light. You know, clear light of the void. But that's a kind of wrong translation, because it's not Swara Prabha, which would be clear light, the compound in Sanskrit. It's Prabha Swara. In Tibetan, it's not cell, it's cell. So the substantive in the compound is the clear part, not the light part. And if you know the Book of the Dead and also some other deep perfection sage, Dzogchen, not Dzogchen, but Dzogchen things, then a moonlit space, sunlit space, and a darklit space are the lights. And what clear light is transparency, so it's invisible. Because it's like glass, you see through it, but you can't see it. And especially since we're made of it ourselves, so the eyeball is made of it. So people who say, I saw clear light, they're seeing the surface of either the moonlight or the sunlight, or then the one who thinks it's nothingness sees the dark light, you know, see the black light, you know, like a black bulb or something. You know. So that I think was what Einstein was aware of. So I think other people, you know, he called it a solid because it's something inconceivable, you know. How can we, and that's, I think, the big anticlimax. We want to wait for a big light and then we're going to be enlightened. And those other three lights are really cool, you know. Red, white, and black. White, red, and black, you know. Moon, sun, and dark. You know?
I'm conscious of our time. I'm conscious of our time together, Professor Thurman.
I'm sorry? Yes.
I'm conscious of our time together.
Oh,
it's come to an end, I'm afraid.
Time is up?
Yeah, I'm afraid so.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay. Thank you. So happy to see you. Okay. Thank you so much.
So,
okay.
Yeah, not wanting to
I gotta get up now.
stop. Hold on. So,
What is your name?
I've got dead a little louder.
The two of us. Exactly. What's your name?
Patrick.
oh,
Patrick.
Irish.
Harry?
Patrick.
Patrick.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you, Patrick.
Irish.
Well, Irish, yes. Well, the Irish would support Tibet. In the UN in 1950, the Irish are the only one who spoke up. Really? Oh, yes, they did. And then the British guy originally said, oh, yeah, Tibet is not China. That's an invasion. But then the next day, he said, oh, wait, a call from London. Maybe it's an internal affair. You know, throw them out right away from the blessings of Hong Kong.
Follow me with the flowers.
But the Irish, they know about being colonialized.
Of course, it's still happening.
I know. Thank you.
So, thank you
thank you
so much for being here. So, this is a little
thank you so
gift
much.
blessed by
Nice.
Ling
So,
Rinpoche.
infinite life, yes.
Exactly.
Wonderful. Thank
And
you.
I heard in an interview you gave that His Holiness said you would live 104 years.
He ordered me
And so,
to get revenge.
we've got plenty of time, and so please would you return?
Oh, yes, I'll try. Thank you so much. I've been enjoying London so much.
And then also,
my friend had a wonderful Yamantaka here with the Rabten Rinpoche, what was it? The Tenba Rinpoche, what's his name?
Yangten Rinpoche, last
Yangten
month.
Rinpoche.
Yes.
I hope to invite him to America also. but I'll
Oh,
come see
very
him
nice.
also.
Wonderful.
Next time he comes here, then maybe he can
We'll
talk
let
over
you
there.
know.
And I thought that
And,
was quite wonderful.
And then
Freedom to correct doing wonderful, thank
from
you.
Geshe Namdak, a translation, Kedrubjet.
Oh, yes,
And
I
sort
love
of
that.
like that. And
You know that Rinpoche, when he first read the Pramanabhuta chapter of Dharmakirti, he went into trance and he sat under a pillar for 2 days or something, and then finally they had to shake him up and get him to go have a bite and take a pee, you know. But he went into a complete trance there before total enlightenment, but he just, he was flipped out by how wonderful it is. Pramanabhuta, the personification of practical reason. Pramanabhuta, as Buddha, as personification of reason. Wonderful. Thank you so much.
thank you.
You're going to run out of hands. I'm sorry.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Oh, that's so kind. Thank you.
Can I help? Can I take
Here, we'll hold them for you. And then we've got Rona. We've got Rona, who also has something to offer. Rona has also
thank you,
something to
Rona.
offer.
How are you?
I'm very well. It's wonderful to meet you.
Wonderful
Thank you
to
so
meet
much
you.
for the teaching.
Thank you. My pleasure.
His Holiness was here in 1999 in the
Yes,
room.
it was. It was not the last time, really, that long
Yes,
ago?
it was.
Sorry.
So, although you've never been here before,
Yes.
your spirit inhabits our practice here
Oh, that's
because in 2002, a group of us received the Guya Samaja initiation, and we've been using your translation of the sadhana since
good.
then.
Oh, thank you.
So I wanted to
I'm
make
so glad.
some presentation. So,
I'm sure it could be improved, but thank you so
well,
much.
we did improve it a little bit.
Oh, good.
Yes. So here's a set of Guya Samaja deity
Oh, thank
images
you.
from Namgyal
Oh, nice,
Monastery.
very nice.
And here's the text we use today,
Oh, the Akshobhyabhadra, yes.
which is
thank you.
nearly, most of it is yours, but a little
Yes.
bit is improved. And
Very nice. Thank you. What else? I have to practice
yes,
it more.
and our teacher at the time, our teacher then,
Yes.
Geshe Tashi Tsering,
Yes.
asked us if we could translate Nagarjuna's Guya Samaja commentary, the Pindikrita Sadhana. So here's our translation of the Pindikrita Sadhana,
Oh, Pindikrita Sadhana. Oh, yeah, very good.
which we made for him.
That's it.
So
That's wonderful.
so much for, thank you for all
Yes,
your
I
teaching.
am actually nowadays with my friend John Campbell, who went to Oxford today, but he's going to be in the weekend with me. We are working on translating Jai Rinpoche's annotations of Chandrakirti's commentary on the Guya Samaja.
Wonderful.
And we just did do that. And it is the most amazing thing. And I don't know if you know that, but apparently when they started doing xylographic printing in the early 1400s, right around the year when Jai Rinpoche passed on, the first book he asked Gyaltsap to have carved was his annotation on the Guya Samaja commentary by Chandrakirti. And so we're trying to translate that because His Holiness feels these things are kind of Gute and Gume, Tantric college material and very elaborate and complicated. But His Holiness feels that for the scientists, this is really sort of Buddhist inner science, and Indian inner science. He's told the Hindus, like in his thing about not converting people, he's told the Hindus that he's not planning with the Tibetan presence in India to convert any Hindus to Buddhism, but rather he wants to reinforce Indian inner science, Adhyatma Vidya, to bring Buddhism back into the conversation with the yoga people, the Vedanta people, the Mimamsa people, the Bhakti people, and so on. So we're trying to also do and honor that and to realize that wish of his, so they don't feel invaded by the Buddhism, their own Buddhism, back from Tibet, the Hindu people.
Yes. And just to finish, if I might be cheeky,
What's that?
if I might be cheeky when I finish, if you write the sequel to your book,
Yes.
perhaps the emanation of the sixth Dalai Lama who comes to Europe could appear in Glastonbury.
Could appear
In Glastonbury,
in Glastonbury.
yes.
Oh, that's a good idea. But His Holiness went to Glastonbury with Patti Smith and so on, and the wonderful Annie Lennox. They love him, and I love them too. They're wonderful.
So thank
Thank
you
you
again.
so much. Very much. see it again. Thank you so much. Okay, at ease. That's great. Thank you for doing so patient. Thank you. And you too.